A young man has accused disgraced BBC star Hugh Edwards of grooming him when he was a sixth form student. A teen at the time, he claims the former newsreader called him Big Boy and Babe, while offering him help with his budding music career. Emir, not his real name, says Edwards attempted to groom him after watching him perform in his school uniform. Edwards then allegedly offered the boy a personal tour of the BBC HQ. Emir claims Edwards asked to follow him on Instagram, then sent him suggestive messages calling him Babe and Big Boy. The conversation culminated in an invitation to tour the BBC's headquarters in London, in part of what has been dubbed a pattern of grooming behaviour. In a documentary due to air tonight, Emir blasted BBC bosses for allowing Edwards free rein of the corporation, with few checks in place for visitors' safety. The disgraced star pleaded guilty to making indecent images of children in September. But he escaped with a suspended jail term despite paying £1,500 for images and videos he branded amazing, which included one of a child aged between 7 and 9. The new allegations are not associated with the criminal case. Emir told Channel 4's Welsh equivalent S4C, "People like him believe they can do whatever they want and abuse their power." Describing meeting Edwards for the first time in his school uniform after performing in a community concert, the man said, "He came up to me at the end of the night to say hello. He said that the performance was good, that I was very talented, and that he wanted to connect with me. He asked me if I wanted to meet him in London and have a tour of the BBC where I could meet a few contacts." Starstruck Emir says he accepted the invite and received a personal tour of the newsroom where he was introduced to BBC workers as a friend of Edwards who had a musical talent. The lad said he was promised opportunities to perform at concerts in London, but this never materialised, yet he continued to message back and forth with Edwards. In those messages, Edwards, almost 40 years older than Emir, would send kisses and heart emojis. Emir initially saw the messages as banterous, but later became uneasy, saying, "He was trying to flirt. It was some sort of grooming communication." After a few months of Emir not returning the flirtatious messages, their communication ceased, and Edwards unfollowed him. Emir said, "He just lost interest in me. I don't think I gave him what he was looking for. People like him think they can do whatever they want and abuse their power. I feel very sad for people who have been affected worse than me. I feel lucky in a way. It's completely disgusting." Multiple ex-colleagues of Edwards have confirmed they had seen him giving tours of the BBC to people who did not work there. Hugh Edwards didn't respond to S4C's request for comment. Raising difficult questions for the BBC and its safeguarding processes, Emir said, "Just because I was with Hugh Edwards, I could walk in without a problem. I don't remember anyone asking why I was there. There should be some sort of procedure or professional reason for someone to enter the building." The BBC says they have commissioned an independent review to strengthen their workplace culture. A spokesperson said, "We have been clear that we are appalled by Hugh Edwards' crimes. He has betrayed not just the BBC, but audiences who put their trust in him. The BBC has robust safeguarding policies and processes in place. If people contact us directly with concerns about our protocols, we will look at these carefully, in line with the BBC's complaints framework." Trauma expert Zoe Clues told GB News Hugh Edwards' sentencing was an insult to his victims.
It's an absolute insult to the victims and survivors of these heinous crimes. And these people, I work with the victims and I work with the survivors, and I have done for many, many years. And these children who have been subject to atrocity, they grow up into adults, and those adults have to spend decades, if not whole lifetimes, recovering. And I'm looking at that length of time and the courage that it takes that individual just to get up every day, half the time. And that's if they make it, because it's well documented that sexual abuse survivors have a higher risk of taking their own lives, a higher level of suicidal ideation, drug abuse, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, going into high-risk situations. if that individual is able to recover, and many of them aren't, that takes a whole lifetime, and that's a whole lifetime compared to his 6 months sentencing.
Zoe,
That's
is it fair to say that sexual abuse, unwanted sexual contact with a young person, I mean, I would even say that you could be a teenager and be subject to this, even over 16, but to a child is pretty much the worst thing you can do from a psychological and emotional point of view to a human being?
I do. I think that it's the worst possible thing that can happen to a child, perhaps apart from seeing your own parents getting murdered. I cannot think of a single thing that is worse. And the impact on a child's psyche is shattering. And that doesn't just disappear as they become an adult. That can show up in all areas of their life: financially, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, sexually, their ability to work, their ability to have relationships, their ability to get out of bed in the morning, their ability to function. It devastates people. And here we are with the most heinous crime, and it's 6 months. And, the worst thing is this is nothing new. The National Crime Agency said last year that 8 in 10 people convicted in the UK over child abuse images, they avoid prison. So what's going on? This is disgusting. It has to change.
Well, that's the point, because the magistrate, Lisa, was following the guidelines, which said he had to mitigate because he was first-time offender and he pleaded guilty. They're going to have to change the guidelines, aren't they, to enable that magistrate to have sent him to prison for a lot longer?
I think so. You look, legality and morality are two very different things, but for the sake of child abuse victims, morality should now become legality. Yeah. And we're just seeing another situation where law and justice are not bedfellows.
Zoe, it's sort of only really in kind of recent years, I'm thinking maybe 30, 40 years, that it's even become acceptable to publicly speak about child sex abuse. Is it more common now? It sounds like a silly, but is this something that was just always happening, but it was behind closed doors and people didn't know about it? But now that we're aware of it, is it easier for victims to come forward, do you think?
I think it's always happened. We've always lived in a very sick, dysfunctional world. I think things like the internet have made it more accessible, more easy for abusers to get access to children, which is disgusting. However, it is also, there's more awareness, there's more recovery groups for people, there's more charities, people are able to speak about it more. Social media has allowed people to speak about it more as well, and they've been praised for doing that and their bravery, because when somebody does that, of course, it allows another survivor to feel less ashamed of their own experience, because one of the worst things that happens to a victim or survivor of childhood sexual abuse is that they absorb the perpetrator's shame, and then they feel ashamed when it was never their shame in the first place to carry. So by other people being able to talk about it, it can lessen that shame. So I don't know if there's more. I think it's always, been around, but I do think there's much more awareness. And unfortunately, with the explosion of the internet, there is, of course, more access for such nefarious activities as being able to access.
So just briefly, in his statement, he witted on about how he felt he struggled all his life because he didn't go to Oxford University and he went to Cardiff University, about his strict father. He was trying to turn himself into the victim. The victims here are these young children who he ruthlessly exploited. Do we know how any of those boys are?
No, we don't know, and we may never know either. And the thing is, as well, when child sexual abuse, when that happens, when that is documented in some way, and that picture, those images are on the internet or WhatsApp or wherever they are, every time those pictures are accessed, it's like that child is abused again. They are re-victimized. So it's disgusting. And the fact that he talked about not getting into Oxford, I mean, I find that really baffling. I mean, what's got to do with anything? Lots of people don't get into certain places. It's and since when has a symptom of depression been accessing indecent images of children?
Yeah, how did you take the excuse of him having mental health issues and perhaps suicidal ideations as to why he couldn't go to prison, or he might be a victim because of his profile in prison?
Well, I think, if his mental health was so bad, then, he would be in a psychiatric unit. I think, as much as I work in mental health, it does seem to also get used as an excuse for so many things. And perhaps also it's an insult to people with mental health challenges who would never dream of accessing that kind of
material.
information.
Yeah.
The documentary airs tonight at 8 p.m. on S4C. Nicholas Dunning, GB News.